Officer DukeReynolds didn't just patrol the streets, he owned them. Or at least, that's what he told himself every time he pinned a badge to his chest. He viewed the law not as a set of rules, but as a weapon to be wielded against those he deemed unworthy. But on a rainy Tuesday in Detroit, Derek made a calculation error that would cost him everything. He saw a black man in a luxury car and assumed he was looking at a criminal. He didn't know he was looking at Special Agent Isaiah Carter, a man who hunted monsters for a living. Derek was about to pull over the one man with the power to turn his life into a living hell. This isn't just a story about an arrest, it's a story about the most satisfying karma you will ever witness. The rain in Detroit didn't wash things clean, it just made the grime slicker. It was 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of night where the streetlights hummed with a nervous energy and the shadows seemed to stretch a little longer than usual. Officer DukeReynolds sat in his patrol car, parked in the alleyway off Jefferson Avenue. The engine idled with a low rumble, vibrating against his spine. He took a sip of lukewarm coffee from a styrofoam cup, his eyes scanning the intersection like a hawk watching a field of mice. Duke was a 20-year veteran of the force. He was built like a vending machine, blocky, hard, and prone to malfunctioning if you pushed the wrong buttons. His reputation preceded him. In the locker room, they called him the Hammer, because to him, everything looked like a nail. But on the streets, the whispers were different. They called him a tyrant. "Quiet night," said the man in the passenger seat. Officer Ben Riley was 23 years old, fresh out of the academy, with a face that still looked like it belonged in a college yearbook. He was gripping the door handle tightly, his knuckles white. This was his third week riding with Duke, and he had already learned that silence was usually the safest option. "Quiet is bad, Riley," Duke grunted, crumpling the coffee cup and tossing it onto the floorboard, adding to a pile of trash. "Quiet means they're plotting. The roaches only come out when they think the lights are off." Riley shifted uncomfortably. "Right, but maybe people are just sleeping, sir?" Duke laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "Sleeping in this neighborhood? Nobody sleeps here, Riley. They deal, they steal, or they run. Our job is to catch 'em before they do." Duke put the cruiser into gear and pulled out onto the main road. The wipers slapped rhythmically against the windshield. He hated this precinct. He hated the people in it. He felt like a zookeeper in a facility where the cages were left unlocked. He believed in order, but his version of order was built on fear and submission. They cruised past a row of boarded-up storefronts. Then Duke saw it. Parked legally near a fire hydrant, but not too close, was an obsidian black Dodge Charger. It was pristine. Rain beaded off the wax job like diamonds. The windows were tinted, but the street lamp above illuminated the silhouette of the driver. Duke slowed the cruiser to a crawl. "Well, well, what do we have here?" "It's just a car, Duke," Riley said, checking his onboard computer. "Parked legally." "Look at the rims, Riley. Look at the finish," Duke sneered, pointing a thick finger at the vehicle. "That's a $60,000 car. You think anyone living in this zip code makes that kind of money legally? That's drug money or blood money." Duke pulled up behind the Charger and flashed a spotlight, blinding the driver via the rearview mirror. He didn't turn on his sirens yet. He wanted to see the reaction. Inside the Charger, Isaiah Carter didn't flinch. He adjusted his rearview mirror to deflect the glare and continued typing on his encrypted laptop. Isaiah was a man of stillness. He was 42, dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit that cost more than Duke's monthly salary. He wasn't a dealer. He wasn't a thief. He was a senior special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, currently leading a task force on public corruption. He was in Detroit to meet a confidential informant regarding a judge who was taking bribes. He was tired, he was hungry, and he was currently annoyed. "Run the plate," Duke barked at Riley. Riley typed in the numbers. Michigan plates, minimal history, registered to a Smith Consulting Group. No warrants, no stolen reports. "It's clean, Duke." "Shell company," Duke muttered. "Classic money laundering. I'm lighting him up." "On what grounds?" Riley asked,
panic rising in his voice. "He's parked. The engine is off." Duke smirked, flipping the switch for the overhead lights. Blue and red exploded against the wet brick buildings. "Suspicious activity in a high-crime area. And look at that tail light. Looks cracked to me." "It's not cracked, Duke." "It is if I say it is." Duke slammed the car door open and stepped out into the rain. He adjusted his belt, resting his hand on the grip of his service pistol, a habit he did subconsciously, a silent threat to the world. He didn't put on his hat. He wanted the rain to hit his face. It made him look tougher, he thought. He walked toward the Charger, his gait heavy and arrogant. He didn't approach with caution. He approached with ownership. He tapped his baton against the rear fender, a loud metallic clack designed to startle. Isaiah Carter sighed, closed his laptop, and slid it into his briefcase. He lowered the window as Duke approached. "Officer," Isaiah said. His voice was a deep baritone, calm and devoid of fear. Duke leaned down, putting his face inches from the window. He smelled the interior, new leather and expensive cologne. It infuriated him. "License and registration," Duke demanded, not offering a greeting. "May I ask the reason for the stop?" Isaiah asked, his hands resting clearly on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. "You can ask whatever you want after you give me your ID," Duke snapped. "Now, or do I have to drag you out of there?" Isaiah held Duke's gaze. Duke had stared down gangbangers, murderers, and junkies. Usually they looked away. They looked down. They looked nervous. Isaiah did none of those things. He looked at Duke with an analytical detachment, like a scientist observing a particularly interesting strain of bacteria. "My identification is in my inside jacket pocket," Isaiah stated clearly. "I am reaching for it now." "Slowly, Duke," hissed, his hand tightening on his gun. Isaiah moved with deliberate precision. He pulled out a slim leather wallet. He didn't hand it over immediately. He opened it, displaying a driver's license. Duke snatched it from his hand. "Isaiah Carter, Maryland license. You're a long way from home, boy." "I am in town for business." "What kind of business? Selling poison to kids?" Isaiah's eyes narrowed slightly. "Consulting." "Consulting?" Duke mocked. He looked back at Riley, who was standing by the cruiser, looking miserable. Duke turned back to Isaiah. "Get out of the car." "Officer, I have provided my identification. Unless you have probable cause to believe I have committed a crime, I am not required to exit the vehicle." The air between them seemed to drop 10 degrees. Duke's face turned a shade of mottled red. He wasn't used to the law being quoted back to him, not with someone like Isaiah. "I said," Duke unclipped the retention strap on his holster, "get out of the car." Isaiah paused. He knew the type. He had studied the psychological profiles of power-tripping officers for years. If he resisted, Duke would escalate. If he complied, Duke would likely still escalate, but Isaiah would have the moral and legal high ground on camera. "I am complying under duress," Isaiah said, loud enough for Riley to hear. "Shut up and move," Duke spat. Isaiah opened the door and stepped out. He stood 3 inches taller than Duke, broad-shouldered and fit. The rain soaked his suit immediately, but he didn't shiver. He stood tall. Duke hated that height difference. He stepped in close, invading Isaiah's personal space, trying to force Isaiah to step back. Isaiah stood like a statue. "Turn around," Duke ordered, hands on the hood. "Am I under arrest?" "You're being detained for investigation. Hands on the hood." Duke shoved Isaiah's shoulder. Isaiah allowed himself to be pushed, placing his hands on the wet metal of the Charger. "Officer, I feel compelled to inform you that I am a federal agent. My credentials are in the same wallet you just took." Duke froze for a split second. Then a wicked, incredulous grin spread across his face. He laughed. It was a loud, barking sound that echoed in the empty street. "A federal agent," Duke scoffed. "Yeah, and I'm the King of England."
"I've heard every lie in the book, buddy. I'm a Fed. I know the mayor. My dad is a lawyer. You think buying a fake badge online scares me?" "Check the wallet," Isaiah said calmly. "Check the panel behind the badge." Duke opened the wallet again. He saw the gold shield, Federal Bureau of Investigation. It looked real. It felt heavy. But Duke's bias was a fortress that logic couldn't breach. In his mind, a black man in this neighborhood with this car was a criminal. Therefore, the badge had to be fake. It was the only explanation that fit his worldview. "Nice prop," Duke said, tossing the wallet onto the wet pavement. It landed in a puddle. Isaiah's jaw tightened. That was government property. "You just made a significant mistake, Officer Reynolds." "Oh, you know my name," Duke sneered. "It's on your badge, and soon it'll be on a scathing indictment." Duke's eyes went cold. He grabbed Isaiah's wrist and twisted it behind his back hard. "That's a threat against a police officer." "It's a statement of fact." "Riley," Duke shouted, "get over here." The rookie ran over, slipping slightly on the wet asphalt. "What is it, Duke? Is he a Fed?" "He's a liar with a fake badge," Duke declared. "Probably uses it to shake down other dealers. We're taking him in. Impersonating a federal officer, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct." Riley looked at the wallet in the puddle. He looked at Isaiah's calm demeanor. "Duke, maybe we should run the badge number, just to be sure." Duke turned on his partner, his eyes blazing. "I gave you an order. Riley, cuff him." The click of the handcuffs was the only sound louder than the rain. Riley's hands were shaking as he applied the steel bracelets to Isaiah's wrists. He wasn't gentle, but he wasn't rough, just clumsy with nerves. "Too tight," Isaiah noted neutrally. "You're cutting off circulation." "Shut up," Duke interjected, shoving Isaiah's head down against the wet hood of the Charger. "You don't get to give orders here. You're in my world now." Duke began the pat-down. It was aggressive, bordering on assault. He slapped Isaiah's legs apart, his hands searching roughly. He reached into Isaiah's jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Duke looked at it, a high-end government-issue smartphone. "Nice phone," Duke muttered. He didn't bag it. He slid it into his own pocket. "Evidence." "That phone is encrypted federal property," Isaiah said, his face pressed against the cold metal of his car. "If you attempt to access it, you will trigger a lockdown protocol." "You talk too much," Duke grunted. He continued the search. His hand brushed against something hard on Isaiah's right hip. Duke's eyes widened. "Gun!" he screamed. "He's got a gun!" Duke ripped his own service weapon from its holster and jammed the barrel into the back of Isaiah's neck. "Don't you move! Riley, draw your weapon!" Riley scrambled backward, fumbling for his gun, pointing it with trembling hands at Isaiah's back. "Don't move, sir. Please don't move." "It is a Glock 19M, Isaiah said, his voice steady despite the gun pressed to his spine. "Standard issue FBI sidearm. The permit is in the wallet you threw in the mud." "Lies," Duke roared. He reached under Isaiah's jacket and yanked the weapon out of its holster. He looked at it. It didn't look like a street piece. It had no serial numbers filed off. It was clean, well-oiled. "Carrying a concealed weapon without a permit," Duke announced, ignoring the reality in front of him. "Assault on an officer. This keeps getting better." Duke grabbed Isaiah by the collar of his expensive suit and hauled him upright. "You're done, you hear me? You're done." He dragged Isaiah towards the patrol car. Isaiah didn't struggle. He walked with dignity, even in handcuffs, even with the rain plastering his shirt to his skin. Duke opened the back door and shoved Isaiah inside. The hard plastic seat was uncomfortable, the cage cramped. Duke slammed the door shut, locking Isaiah in. Outside, the rain intensified. Duke turned to Riley. "Search the car, toss it, find the drugs." Riley looked at the Charger. "Duke, if he really is a Fed—" "He's not a Fed, you idiot!" Duke shouted, rain dripping from his nose. "Look at him. Does he look like a Fed to you? Feds are guys named Smith and Wesson in cheap suits. This guy's a player. Now search the car." Riley swallowed hard and moved to the Charger. He opened the driver's side door. He began to search. He looked in the glove box. Registration papers, insurance, a rental agreement for a different vehicle, and a folded document stamped Department of Justice. Riley picked up the document, his heart hammered against his ribs. It was a travel authorization form for Special Agent Isaiah Carter. "Duke," Riley called out, his voice weak. "Duke, look at this."
Duke stormed over. He snatched the paper from Riley's hand. He barely glanced at it before crumpling it up and tossing it into the back seat of the Charger. Fake paperwork with the fake badge. These guys are getting sophisticated. Keep looking. I want the dope. There's nothing here, Duke, Riley pleaded. It's clean. There's no drugs, no money, just files. Duke stared into the car. His face twitched. He knew how this worked. If he brought this guy in and there were no drugs, no money, and the guy had a badge, even a fake one, it would be a headache. He needed something sticky. He needed a felony that couldn't be argued away. Duke reached into his own utility belt. He had a small pouch there, usually for latex gloves, but Duke kept a little insurance there. A small, clear plastic baggie containing 3 grams of white powder. He had confiscated it from a junkie 2 weeks ago and never logged it. He looked at Riley.